everyone, and welcome. My name is Dr. Sobel Bunis. I'm a doctor of chiropractic, and I'm the founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse. And I want to welcome all of you today to this new episode of our conversation titled Astrology as a Healing Guide. And today it's all about the spirit of Leo. So, for those of you who are Leos, born under the sign of Leo, that includes me, welcome. Some of you have a lot of Leos in your life and you'd love to understand them better. Welcome. Some of you may want to have a Leo in your life, and that's exciting too. And then, of course, as Beth has taught me over and over again, and it sinks in more and more deeply, all of us are affected by all the different signs. So everybody is welcome. We've designed these conversations to be incredibly inclusive. And we have, once again, a lot of material. Beth always gives me so much juicy material. It's hard to cover everything in an hour, but we're going to do our best. So I'm going to start by doing my brief introduction, and then I'm just going to hand it over to Beth and let her do it, okay? Let her really get us started. Now, when I say Beth, I'm referring, of course, to my very dear friend and a wonderful, wonderful colleague, Beth McDonald. And I'm going to let her do her own introduction so that she can just dive in. Okay, here we go. I'm Sobel Bunis. I've been practicing chiropractic medicine for the past 35 years. I've had a holistic family practice. And one of the meanings of having a holistic chiropractic practice is that we do look at and address not just physical health, but emotional and spiritual health. And so I've been very fortunate right from the very beginning of my practice to learn how to do what's called emotional clearing. And that is all about finding where your body is holding on to stored emotional trauma and removing it from your nervous system. And what we know about holding on to and storing stored emotional trauma is that it affects our lives in a million different limiting negative ways. And so it's a very, very powerful tool for healing. And what I've learned over the years of practice and over the years of just living life is that the world is filled with different avenues for learning. And when I met Beth 30-something years ago, and I started learning about astrology from her and getting readings from her, I realized that astrology is one more powerful avenue for finding information that we can then apply to our own healing process. Now, it's like, again, like I said, it's a very inclusive thing that we want to create. So even if you're not a Leo or you don't know any Leos, please stay tuned, because I can guarantee that something that we're going to discuss today is going to relate to you personally. So with that, Dr. Sobel Bunis, founder of the Emotional Clearinghouse, passes it over to Beth McDonald.
Awesome, Sobel. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for making this happen, for being the impetus behind this. I'm Beth McDonald. I'm a psychic and an astrologer and a business consultant. I'm a really rare niche. I'm like one of 10 people in the country who does this. And one of the reasons why Sobel and I gel so well together is exactly the reason she said. There are so many valuable, valid ways to heal emotional pain, emotional trauma, the blocks to achievement, the blocks to moving forward in your life, the blocks to being more happy. However, when you're dealing with crisis situations, people need help, and people need help fast. And so one of the things I love about the emotional clearing method that Sobel uses is it's really fast. And then you can get the blocks out of the way so that you can reconnect with your own innate wisdom, the stuff you already know, the stuff you already trained to know, the stuff you can't get to when you're upset, and then, rock and roll. And so sometimes it goes back and forth a bit. Sometimes it goes, what we see a lot is that a crisis comes up in our lives that brings an awareness to where we're not living our best lives or being our best selves. And so astrology can help us pinpoint that. We'll make a little list. We'll send you over to Sobel. Sobel will attack the list, and then she always finds other stuff. And then she sends you back, and then we move forward. And sometimes it goes back and forth. And sometimes it happens on a very cyclical basis, often with Saturn cycles. Saturn moves every 2.5 to 3 years, and like Saturn moves People show up, we get them straightened out. We don't hear from them for a while. And then Saturn moves again 2.5, 3 years later, and then they're back with the next chapter. And so don't ever think you failed. If something comes back up, it's just time for the next layer. So,
Beautifully said, Beth McDonald. Beautifully said.
So with that said, I want to just reiterate one thing, and then I'm going to dive into the attributes of Leo. One of the things that I think is the hardest for people to wrap their heads around is that everybody has all 12 of these archetypes, these astrological personality pieces, in their birth chart. It's just that there's always a place where there's something stronger than others. And so again, these kinds of, one of the reasons so we'll design these talks is so that we can address the issues of the textbook people with the Leo suns, the Leo risings, the Leo moons, but also people who have a desire to understand where Leo is in their own chart. Because where, let's say, because we're talking about Leo now, where Leo is in your own chart is where you are going to have these attributes in spades, and when you are, where you are going to be more easily able to access those kinds of traits, behaviors, especially in a crisis, that sort of thing. Does that make sense? We're good. Okay, so one more thing I want to say, being the Gemini, before we dive in, is like, I want to welcome all our viewers and our participants, especially the regulars. We are loving you. And I want to invite you to type in any questions you may have about anything in the comments section so we can address it. Because again, we've been doing this a little while and we can get kind of focused on certain things and forget what is of interest or what is of the most use to people who are beginning or intermediates, you know, whatever, or whatever's going on in your life right now. So we live to serve. And so please do not hesitate. Yay. Hello, Tanya. I wasn't going to use, Tanya's asking if I'm going to use her birth chart. And I said, I don't have it in front of me, but given time, let's, if there's something specific you want to know, you ask, because I don't have it in front of me.
I need to make a comment before we go any further, because you said we live to serve, and I agree. However, being a Leo, we're also living to have a lot of fun
with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Just want to be clear about the fun part.
Yeah. And this is where the combinations can come in so handy, because to use Sobel as an example, Virgo she's a Virgo sun. No, she's a Leo sun. She's a Leo sun. And the Leo sun is fun. The Virgo is competent. And so it's like the Virgo is very precise. They're very health oriented. And so, you know, we all have had and are having since COVID, especially, situations where we seek healthcare and it's a miserable experience. Either we're not treated as a human, or the doctor has no bedside manner, and so Sobel really strives to give people a different experience. And I've personally benefited from that. Members of my family have personally benefited from that, my clients. And so I can't give her a strong enough reference. But back to your birth chart, Tanya, if you want to type in something specific, I can address it, but I don't have it in front of me and I didn't think to print it out, and I'm sorry. Okay, so with that said, attributes of Leo. The first thing that they talk about a lot is just what they call key words, where there's a handful of words that give you some brackets of the higher octaves and the lower octaves, so that you can begin to wrap your head and your hands around it. And in the weeks we've been preparing for this one, the thing I keep coming back to is fun, strength, and shining star. Now, a corollary is majesty, majestic, because Leo is the lion who is the king of beasts. And so, to a certain degree, actually, I want to step back because I was walking this morning, another piece dropped in. There are ways in which the sign of Cancer, which we talked about last time, and the sign of Leo are the most familial, the most familially oriented, family driven signs in all the zodiac. And it can be hard to understand that overlap. And with the sign of Cancer, Cancer is the matriarch, the mother, and there's a lot more emotion and intuition there. There's also caring for. And then Leo, on the other hand, is very familial. They're very family oriented, but they're more from that fierce strength and protector standpoint. You know, they have those sharp teeth and claws, and they will use them for your benefit. So there is a strength there. Leo has the strength to go to the darkest, hardest places in ways that Cancer is sometimes too emotional to do. Or if they're clear, they don't have as much physical or emotional strength to do it the way Leo does. Leo just seemingly has unending wells of strength and reserves to draw upon, which is a huge, huge thing. Does that make sense?
It's beautiful. I
Okay.
love that you're drawing a correlation between last month and this month and Leo, because that is one of the things that we want out of this program. It's not that we want people honed in on one particular sign. We really want the broad view and the really integrated view. So that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. The interesting thing too is back to integration. You know, the Cancer is the female, the matriarch of the family. The Leo is the male, the patriarch. And it really takes, even in gay and lesbian couples, there has to be the balance of the male and the female energies in order for things to really work for everybody. And it's there's always ways to do it. And everybody, I believe in family is democracy. Everybody can get their needs met, but everybody sometimes has to kind of take turns, you know, for the good of the whole. Not everybody can always get their needs met at the same time. Yeah.
All right. So now I've got a question that didn't even come up in all the wonderful
research we did. Yeah.
All 18 pages, by the way, everyone.
Yeah.
18 pages. We're not kidding here. There's a lot of
research.
No. Okay. So if a major quality and attribute of Leo is masculine, then what about female Leo? What's the balance there?
Well, what happens a lot, and again, this depends on placement, what else is going on in the birth chart. Mm-hmm. But Leo women with a Leo sun may be stronger physically, emotionally than the average woman. And so on a good day, you're going to find yourself as a role model for other women. And on a bad day, there's going to be a target on your back saying, lady, you're too loud, you're too pushy, you're too brassy, you're too bold, you're too bossy, all that stuff we get. And so, again, this is what I love so much about you being born in Rochester, the home of the women's movement. Like, that is so deeply embedded in your soul. And so you have had just a consistent way to keep moving forward, despite what some people might not be comfortable with, you know, but what our generation was here to change. Right. And so, yeah, you get to pace yourself. You don't have to take on the whole world at the same time. Pick your battles, pick the ones you can win, but it's part of who you are, part of who we are.
I want to say too, along that line of thinking, is that more recently, even in the last 6 to 8 months, I would say, I've been getting more and more guidance to work more and more deeply women and with women's issues, especially those that are ancestral, things that have actually come down through the generations and all through our DNA, and they're sitting in our DNA and our cellular memory. And I've been guided to some very, very powerful healing tools and protocols for dealing with where women are holding on to these painful patterns that are really, really specific to women and limiting women in ways that we don't want. We want women free to express themselves.
Yeah, yeah. And there are so many blocks. And this is what I love about all the different healing modalities that we have access to now.
Right.
And especially yours, because it can get to this lifetime, the womb, birth trauma, conception, past lives, ancestral. It covers all the bases and in ways that not all of them do. And it's just a very, very versatile tool. And it's so handy because you just never know sometimes what's going to be the causal factor of whatever the problemo is. Like,
or what that final anchoring piece. Like I'll have a client I've worked with for years, and they've come, to the edge, and there's still something holding them back. And very often it's on one of these deeper layers. It's a cultural trauma, it's ancestral, it's family based, it's soul based. And that ends up being the missing piece. So it's pretty exciting times for healing. And I think about the women that raised us and what they didn't have access to.
Oh, Lord.
And I think we really are. But we're pioneers in a way too. We're laying track.
Yeah, no. And I just want to second that emotion. At one point I was having a very deep healing session around just things that were making me blue. It was literally the day of the debris flow of after the Thomas fire, when we were all locked down because 101 was, and we were trying to evacuate everybody, and it was so overwhelming, and and there was no power. It's like, okay, we're all just home, what are we going to do? And so we did some deep healing work, and what came up for me was a bunch of the ancestral women, especially on my mother's line, coming forward, and they just said, "Oh, honey, that ain't yours. That depression is mine." And then they like pulled it out of my chest, and then it just went like dominoes through my mother, through her mother, through her mother, and her like it was just a beautiful thing. I could feel it, I could see it, and it's like at that point, even though we'd talked about this for years, I knew that the ancestral healing is very, very powerful, especially for issues that run in families. Often depression runs in families, bipolar, schizophrenic, even diseases like cancer. There's ways we can address those things, and it's really, really powerful. And so once again, if you're struggling or suffering or at least a little bit uncomfortable, explore something, because this is a time of reckoning. We're all here for whatever reason. We all decided it was going to be a good time for us to be here now, and now we're all sitting here going, wow, what was I thinking? Global pandemic, climate change. Wow, this is harder than I thought it was going to be. And so we all are struggling to find the 4 archetypes of Leo, which I will now dive into. Please. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for keeping up with me. I'm making a left turn here. One of the things I love about doing this series is being able to get granular and go into the deep weeds with stuff. And like last time we were talking about Cancer, and Cancer has one archetype, but like 4 different myths that are said to have been causal factors in determining the archetypes and the attributes. Well, Leo has basically the same myth through 4 or 5 different cultures over thousands of years. There's always the one big lion. It's always the lion, and it always rules the same stuff. The tricky part The attributes are the same. All that strength, all that majesty, the lion's heart, the ability to love, and then being just so gorgeous, being the shining star, like one of the brightest stars in the universe is at the chest of the constellation, right? It just keeps getting more amazing for me. Anyway, but the tricky part with Leo, one myth, but four different archetypes, four, and they're all really massive and they all serve in some way. Think about it. Leos are pack animals. They're rarely solo unless they got kicked out by a more dominant male. You know, it's like, and so the four archetypes of Leo are, first one being the king. Leo is the king. So on a bad day, on a good day or a bad day, like you're here to kind of run the place. And so where Leo, even if you're not a Leo, where Leo is in your natal chart, let's say it's in your second house, the house of the money you make by your own hand. You came here to be a king of money. You came here to earn, baby, and don't let anybody mess with you. You know, this is where you came here to be fierce and successful and that kind of thing. So Leo's the king. Second archetype is that of the creator or the artist. Leos are very bright, very creative. And again, if Leo's in your second house, you may be the king of creative finances, or you may do really beautiful things with your money, like fund the Getty, or like fund a museum, or you know, things that benefit society from an arts or artistic standpoint, things that give more people art classes for the Boys and Girls Club, that kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. The third archetype of the of Leo the Lion is that of the hero or the superhero. So again, we incarnated into this time of great trial. And if you think about how epic and timely the resurgence of the Marvel Comics universe, the DC Comics universe, there's never just one, man. It is a team of superheroes, and each one has their own superpower, and each one has their own Achilles heel. And so this is where the power of the pack comes in. It's like, you know, you have the Hulk do his Hulk thing, and then you have Spider-Man do his Spider-Man thing. And part of being an effective pack is being able to work together to be the hero, be the superhero when you need to be. And by God, right now we need them. We need all y'all to find your uniform, put it on, and let's get out there. You know, there's stuff we got to do. So then the last one has to do with the concept of the Savior and the Messiah. Now, these are kind of two halves of a coin. The Savior is the one who saves the day. He's the superhero at the end of the day. Like at that one, I forget which one it was, but they're all sitting around in a deli in New York City after they've saved the world. You know, they've been the saviors in that Marvel Comics movie. The Messiah is the one we're waiting for, the one who's coming. And so for some of us with a lot of Leo, or where Leo is in your natal chart, it may take you a while to get your legs under you and shift gears from being the Messiah, the one who was promised, to being the savior who actually does the work. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah. And so from a healing perspective, a lot of times where Leo is where you have this epic strength that everybody else can see from a mile away, but you might not be confident of it, or you may have abused it in a past life, or your great grandparents did, and so you can't access it. Or your parents may have been scared to death of it when you were a little kid, and then that inevitable parental wound thing came up. And
right.
So, yeah.
Exactly. We were talking today about the whole idea of the parental wound. And it makes me think of two different things. One is that so many of my clients and patients over the years in doing emotional clearing, we go back into childhood and we discover that the way they were raised, they weren't allowed to express those characters and those qualities. Like you were saying, parents who were afraid of it, or parents who just didn't believe in allowing the children to be fully expressed.
Yeah.
And the other, for example, you talked about Leo being really strong in wanting what they want. I know we'll probably get into that more later. And so many of my clients over the years have told me, and I've seen it in the emotional clearing work, that they were never even allowed to want.
Right.
They were right. Everything was provided for them. They weren't ever allowed to develop their own sense of what they wanted.
Yeah.
They were told, "Oh, you don't want that. You don't mean that. You're saying that, but you don't really know what you're saying." So their instincts and their natural attributes were constantly being suppressed. And if I also think of, so many of my patients over the years grew up in abusive households, whether that was abusive emotionally or physically or both. And I think of, a child standing up, trying to stand up for, let's say, a younger sibling who the father is berating, and standing up and trying to protect his younger sibling and getting smacked or beaten or shut down. And I think that happens a lot, where the natural desire to be that strong leader, to be that one that's going to protect, to really, be that strength in the world, gets shut down, and gets shut down in scary and dangerous and traumatic ways. So a lot of people carry that in their energy field. And, when we find it and clear it, it really opens up those pathways. The other piece I really wanted to share with people today is, even if you grew up in a really loving home, very often, this goes to this idea of a parental wound in childhood. Very often, your parents carry these subconscious patterns that they, with no intent on their own, they end up projecting onto you. So, for example, let's say you had a parent who carried deep subconscious levels of fear and self-doubt, and that got projected onto you as a young child. And now you grow up and you're an adult who seems to be confident and doing well, but every now and then gets tripped up or taken down by this internal sense of fear and self-doubt, and it doesn't even make any sense. And it turns out that what it is that you are carrying this subconscious pattern from your parent in your energy field, in your nervous system, and it really needs to be released to free you up totally. So that whole subconscious projection is a big piece of that parental wound. And for a Leo, in all the specific ways that a Leo would get shut down, it could really be really painful and limiting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Leo needs to be worshipped and adored, or at a minimum, appreciated for,
at a minimum.
For their contributions. Yeah. Others don't. Others just know it's there, or will carry on regardless. Scorpios, Capricorns. If you give them praise, great. If you don't, they're good. They're good. They're just going to keep doing their thing. Right. But Leo does need to be acknowledged, and acknowledged properly. And it's really tricky. The thing I keep coming back to is how they say we only really access about 10% of our psyche and our soul and our brain and our body, mind, spirit, peace. Like 90% of all we are and all we do is on the unconscious level. And that's part of why all the world's great religions and all the world's great healing modalities have in common that drive, that desire to pull things out of the unconscious and the subconscious and bring them out of the dark into the light, so they can be healed and activated and actualized and become an asset rather than a liability. I think that's why all those great myths are like turning something awful into something good, or Rumpelstiltskin turning straw into gold, or the alchemists of the medieval time trying to turn lead into gold. Like the whole, and Leo rules gold, right? So we're going for the gold. We're just going for the gold. And with that said, when we are little, we are just little sponges, and everything, we just soak it up and we soak it up. And until we're about 7 or 8 years old, we really don't realize that everything isn't our fault. Whether we're led to believe that or not, we kind of take that on. It's part of the terrain for most young people. And again, that's part of what contributes to that clinical piece about the inevitable parental wound. We always need to be mindful. Again, Sobel and I can't stress this enough. You do not have to have come from an abusive childhood and an abusive family to have the inevitable parental wound. Everyone has one, according to certain branches of psychology. And so at some point, it'll become apparent to you what those are. If it doesn't, well, and you and I, Sobel and I, are so much about proactivity. It's like, let's just get in there and find it and disarm it like a bomb, before it goes off. Yeah. So again, always be mindful of that.
One of the most interesting ones I found recently with this whole subconscious projection wounding, that type, was a woman whose mother carried a deep familial depression, and it got projected onto this woman when she was a little girl. And she's a very successful woman. And yet every now and then she gets just slammed with depression that comes out of nowhere. And we were finally able to locate that wasn't her depression, just like you discovered. And in fact, it had come inadvertently and, not on purpose, from her mother's own pain and subconscious patterns. So we were able to clear it. The other piece that came up for her, and I think I'm going to have so much fun applying this to my work with women in general, is that her mother also carried a very deep, harsh self-judgment of herself, her body, and her attractiveness. And again, this very successful woman that I've been working with for years has this ongoing battle with weight and this ongoing dissatisfaction. No matter where her body is, she can't feel at peace. But it's really not her dissatisfaction. It really is her mother's. So those kind of clearings where we can remove all those blocks that aren't your own, it can be incredibly healing, incredibly freeing. So.
And create a lot of compassion. Again, one of the things we're always trying to do is remove whatever hurt, fear, anger, frustration, outrage that gets in the way of us being compassionate with other humans, so that we can work together across the aisles and solve our common problems and move things forward. And again, I can't put too fine a point on this. We see this kind of struggle a lot in people whose mothers were depressed during pregnancy and who had postpartum depression after. That it interferes with the bond, and then that imprints the child. It gives them a sense of inferiority or something's wrong, when it's really not them. It's just mama had a problem and she wasn't getting the help she needed. And it's also part of why we're both such fierce advocates for better maternal child health care in this country, and then also family leave, so that the first couple of months and years after the child is born, the parents have the ability to be there and be present and give each other and the child and even children what they need. It's a huge thing. And so if you were born of that and you know it, again, that's the realm of Leo and Cancer. And that's a really good place to poke around and investigate with your healing. If you don't have family lore, family history, family stories that you know of, there's ways to get at that. If you suspect it's a problem, that, and then the vanishing twin, which I will hand to you. Yeah.
Well, okay. So before we talk specifically about the twin, I think you were going to talk about Leo and Leo having this inherent drive to connect.
Yeah.
That first, we can bring in the piece about the vanished twin, because it really directly relates to that.
It is part of that. It is. You're right.
That's okay. Connect and how that relates to family.
Subtle differences. Yeah. Okay, so each sign has a desire to connect and a drive to connect with other humans that it loves and cares about, but they manifest differently. And that what that also means, on a good day, it's going to manifest differently. On a bad day, that neediness, that unfulfilled ego need, is going to manifest in a different way. And so on a good day, Leo is going to be the one you can count on to be checking in. Like when someone has a surgery, it's like, oh, do you need a ride to the doctor? Do you have food? You know, the person with Leo is, and working. Actually, I want to say this differently. For those who are not in the helping professions, helping someone who is physically sick, helping someone who's just had surgery is really hard. And a lot of family members and friends really struggle with that. We're seeing that with COVID now, where it's like, geez, I couldn't even get a bunch of folks to just buy some food and drop it off on a doorstep for someone. You know, it's like, you're not risking your life and you could wear a mask. It would be okay. You can just ring the doorbell, wear your mask to buy the food, drop it off, ring the doorbell, wave and say goodbye. You know, it's okay. And it's hard. And so Leo is going to be the one who's strong enough to go there, or to go to the doctor's appointment with you. You know, so many of us as women, especially, we go alone. We go alone and then we get overwhelmed and it's too much. And especially as we get older, they say always now to take an advocate with you, someone who can take notes, someone who can ask the questions you don't think to ask, things like that. And so one more time, oh, another place I see this is court. When your best friend has to go to divorce court, who's going to go with her? The one that has the most Leo. Leo is like, their need is for you to know that they're strong enough to take it, you know, and if you need me, I will be there with bells on. They need to be able to apply their superhero superpower strengths. They need a place for that to go, you know. Yeah, otherwise they're redoing the landscape in the backyard and lifting cinder blocks, and you know, it's nice, but it's like there's more to it than that. Does that make sense?
That does. That absolutely makes sense. So I was looking at, what about the Leo, as you talk about good day, bad day, you know, fulfillment.
Oh yeah.
So the Leo who isn't able to connect and who is more isolated, which is so at odds with their natural.
Oh, and that can be some of the hardest. That can be turned inward more.
Right.
And there's a couple of ways this could play out. I see this in a certain percentage of the times. It's like they're not getting the attention or the appreciation they need because they don't know how to ask for it in a healthy way, or they don't know how to read the room and show up and apply their strengths appropriately in the moment. And
Right.
so then they get to be a little showboaty. They will constantly turn the conversation back to themselves or turn the attention back to themselves in some way. But then also what we see a lot in like on a super bad day, this turns into that whole category of what they call incels, involuntary celibates, or sexual predators, people who act out. And there's an extraordinary amount of research on this. Leo rules aspects of sex, sex being the most literal act of creation. And so on a good day, you know, Leo needs to have a partner and needs to have an awesome sex life. And on a bad day, if they were repressed, if they were led to believe at a very small age that there was something really wrong with them, and so then they never got any help or support or anything that changed that narrative during their adult life, they can turn into people who are striving to get attention of any kind in a really inappropriate way.
It's so interesting. And
Yeah.
what you and I had spoken about before was the vanished twin syndrome.
Yeah. And that can really contribute to that sense of loss and needing uh, needing to, I see this a lot in like with the vanishing twin about like not being alone. I need to not be alone. But
Right.
you've got a lot more data on that. Yeah.
But it can also go the other way, which is interesting. So the vanished twin, for those who've never heard of it before, has to do with the fact that a certain percentage of all pregnancies, something like 10 or 15% of pregnancies, actually begin as twins, even in families where no twins have actually been born live. So you have this percentage of pregnancies that begin as twins, and then one of those little tiny, developing fetuses, usually very early on, like maybe sometimes within the first month, dies and is either expelled from the mother's body, or it's broken down and reabsorbed by the mother's body, or in rare cases, it's absorbed by the surviving twin's body, who then down the road may end up finding out they have extra kidneys or other weird medical kinds of findings. But the emotional trauma of the surviving twin can go both ways. It can go to what you just described as this really strong desire for connection, but it can go actually the other way, where there's actually almost like a survivor's guilt. Like, I survived, therefore I need to come into the world and take care of everything and be on my own and make sure that I prove that I'm worthy of having survived. And a lot of those people end up doing it on their own. And the other reason they end up on their own is because they have this fear that the closest person to them, if they get really close, because what can be closer than a twin in utero, is fear that that person is going to leave, go away, or literally die. So those are two of the ways that the vanished twin syndrome, for a Leo child surviving that, could end up with them failing to connect and failing to form family and failing to fulfill on those basic attributes. So I just wanted to share that, because I think the vanished twin is such a fascinating piece. And over my practice, I mean, it's just been a source of amazing healing, because it will be, for many people, the thing that no one ever reached for them. And once you reach it and clear the trauma from it, it can open up worlds. So.
Yeah. No, it's really powerful stuff. It's just really powerful stuff. And it's the kind of healing that was not around for our mothers. And so as you speak, I'm just like, I'm so grateful that we have this now, and that these up and coming generations of women have more of this now, so that they are more empowered to be more whole, to be the matriarch they want to be, whether they have children or not, to be the wise elder of the tribe and support the upcoming generations.
Absolutely. And I'm one of those examples. I don't have children of my own, but I have everybody's children. The community mommy.
Yep, you're the den mother. Yeah.
Exactly. And now the wise elder. Oh my God.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
Yeah. Oh man.
All right, my dear, what other juicy Leo tidbits would you like to share with us?
Well, let's talk about the elements. And the element, each sign is put into a category of one of four elements: fire, earth, air, water. And Leo is a fire sign. And what I love about that part is it's so visual. For those of us who are visual learners, to be able to take a sign and put it in a category of an element, it's like you don't even have to say it. It's like the element is said to rule aspects of your way of being, like what motivates and drives your behavior. And fire is said to rule that spark of life, the breath of life in a lot of ways. Granted, fire is fire, but fire needs air to burn. And so, yeah, and that's another way that plays into that Leo needing to connect. Like, fire can burn by itself, but only for a little while. It needs something to burn, and it needs air to breathe. And so, yeah. And so it will, again, that element piece is part of what drives Leo to connect. But it's also on the downside, like fire can be impulsive. And for those of us that live in places that have been ravaged by fire, like, you don't even get it. You read it on the page, but you don't get it till you see it. And how the wind will blow those embers from the main line of the fire, and then half a mile down the road you get a new spot fire from one ember that blew, and so Leo can get blown about a bit by the winds of other people's issues. Leo can also get impulsive and just be like, oh, I want to be over there now. Bye. I'll see you. I'll send you a postcard. It'll be great. Yeah. So communication is always going to be a piece,
Yes. Hang on 2 seconds. We talked about the difference with Leo. Excuse me, honey. Between will and intuition.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
What we got from that was that a very balanced, grounded Leo has the ability to tap into their intuitive, wise self. But a Leo that's out of balance or is carrying a lot of stored emotional trauma, they're going to get triggered. Every time stored emotional trauma gets triggered, you're now in what we call a reactive state. And I think that's when you'll see the most difficult side of Leo, that will. I want what I want. I want to be over there now. I want to buy this. I want to have that, where they can be too dominant and too demanding, right? And so will versus intuition, I thought, was just a wonderful, wonderful distinction where you talk about the difference between someone who's healthy, grounded, balanced, has done a lot of healing work, as opposed to someone who's carrying a lot of trauma. And I think maybe our listeners do or don't know, but basically stored emotional trauma sits in our nervous system. It sits there like a little button. And it's basically something that happened from your past that was very powerful and traumatic and put you into a survival state. And the nervous system is going to hold on to that memory to protect you in the future. However, in your day-to-day life, anything that happens that's remotely similar or familiar to that original trauma literally hits that stored button, wakes up those painful emotions, and they come screaming out of the past into the present. And now you're upset, or you're in a fight, or you're being willful, or you're being triggered, and now you're overeating, or you're overspending, or some other addictive behavior, all because these painful emotions are now present and you don't want to feel those. So that's where all of these kind of coping mechanisms and unhealthy behaviors come from.
Can come.
But for past emotional trauma being triggered.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to show up in that inability to tap into intuition, and instead becoming willful, selfish, dominant, all the things that you described.
And then be confused. One of my longest corporate clients is a Leo, and this is where it gets tricky for business people or people who gamble as a hobby. Leo also rules gambling and speculation, risk taking. And so where this gets so perfect and helpful for me is that, somewhere between the will and your intuition lies risk. And what I see a lot with gamblers and people who don't run their corporations and their businesses in a conservative, traditional way, they run it kind of by the seat of their pants. I've had a number of Leo business owners, and one in particular, thankfully she has assets, but it's like she frequently confuses her will with intuition, and she will chase a deal or the prospect of a deal until it's like 62 other people have said, honey, that's dead. That's never going to happen. And she's like, but my intuition. And it's like, no, honey, that's your will. You want that deal. You see the dollar signs. I see them reflected in your glasses. It's like, and that's where that fierce Leo will, when harnessed appropriately, can, conquer Iwo Jima or like the Battle of the Bulge. It's like that caliber strength. They can do the impossible. They can do the impossible, but if they're not clear and clouded with trauma, then they will confuse what they want
Right.
with their intuition. And that's why helping those people get clear and then giving them a set of like intuitive development tools that is appropriate so they can do that. Otherwise, it's like you said, they're just triggered and not knowing it. And a colleague of mine, an astrologer whose husband is an electrician, likened post-traumatic stress responses to an electrical box, where it's like, you know, you get triggered and you blow a fuse and then there's no current. And
Right.
yeah, so
There's something, this conversation you're having right now reminds me of something that I've seen in myself as a pattern. I read in your notes that every sign has a strong statement.
yes,
And for Leo, it's I will.
yeah,
And when I read that, I thought, oh my God, I relate to this so strongly, because what I've always said to people is, you know, I'm such a strong visionary, and I have all of this enthusiasm, and I can see all the possibility, and I can see the big picture. And I have often said to people, whatever you do with me, please don't ever say to me, Sobel, be realistic, right? Because I don't want to be stopped
by that.
at will, the combination of my will and my vision. But that's where I've gotten into trouble, is where I've been unable to look at the reality and weave that into my vision and find the balance between the two. And that's something that's taken me years to understand. And it's gotten me in trouble more than once. And it's that, you know, and it sounds like a really cool thing to say, whatever, you know, hey, I'm so cool. Please don't tell me to be realistic because I'm such a visionary. Aren't I cool? But what it means is that that's completely out of balance. It's a beautiful thing. It's an asset that can also be a liability. And so that's some of where my own healing work has come from, is really finding that balance. So sometimes the lessons are hard.
Well, you know, this is Earth. This isn't the Oprah show. Everybody gets a car. Yeah. To that end, you know, from a business or a leadership perspective,
Yes.
Leos make great leaders. And where Leo is in your natal chart is where you came here to lead. And you may have to tell other people to like step aside a little bit and give me some room to like demonstrate and earn your trust, you know, earn your respect. But the tricky part with Leos, especially Leos who are that visionary, is again, fire moves so fast.
Right.
And in order to achieve the vision, to make that vision a reality, you got to have a pack and you got to train them. And from a Gemini perspective, training the pack is boring and not fun. And so figuring out, again, my favorite metaphor for a successful Leo is to be Mary Poppins, the one strong enough to go into the thick of it and make a funny song that gets the point across about the spoonful of sugar, so everybody gets on board and does their part. I love that scene, that song from Mary Poppins. On a good day, on the best day, Leo is going to do that. And nobody's going to hate him. Everybody's going to be like, wow, that was awesome. You know, when you're in a leadership position, you got a target on your back a lot. And, you know, everybody loved her, and that's your role model, you know, and it can be hard for Leos to slow down and take the steps to make their vision a reality on this planet when you're dealing with humans. Because just like the care and feeding of your team, keeping everybody engaged and enrolled and focused on the task at hand and enthusiastic, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I want to keep an eye on the time because I was hoping, okay, here's what I wanted to say. I just want to share for a minute, down and dirty.
Yeah.
The Leo, the physical, the problem, the places where Leo tends to go out of balance physically is in the cardiovascular system and in the spine, and you said particularly in the thoracic spine. And what I want our people to know is the deep connection between the physical and the emotional. So
right.
the cardiovascular system is connected to the following emotions: feeling lost, feeling vulnerable, insecure, abandoned, deserted, profoundly deep, unrequited love. So doesn't that sound like the Leo who's failed to connect?
Right.
Like feels abandoned, deserted, doesn't feel their love coming back to them. So the cardiac, the cardiovascular system on a physical level, on the emotional level, those are the primary ones. And for the spine is fascinating because every organ in the body has the capacity to send what we call distorted viscerosomatic messages out to the spine and create spinal problems. So if you're looking at pain, let's say between your shoulder blades, between, let's say, T1 and T5, that could be the liver and the gallbladder causing those issues in your spine. And for everyone to understand, the primary emotions that are stuck in that energy field for liver, gallbladder: anger, resentment, frustration, depression, even being emotionally repressed, and even irrational negative beliefs, all can be part of that. And when you go down to the lower part of the thoracic spine, which you said was classic for Leo, you get into the kidney area. And the kidney is fear, dread, paralyzed will, impending doom, right? I mean, so these are the direct emotional connections to the spine and to the organs. And we could go on all day doing nothing but that. I know you really wanted me to share that with people to make sure that, that there is a deep connection between our physical selves and our emotional selves. And by doing deep emotional healing work, what you were doing is improving your physical well-being in a very direct way. So I had to get that in. And, I want to make sure, I think we just have a few minutes left. So Beth, I want to make sure people know how to reach you, what your offerings are.
Right.
A million thanks, honey. A million thanks for all of this. I mean, I always come away enriched. Thank you, dear.
Always, always, always. I'm just so grateful that you started doing this because it's magical. And I work with people on an as needed basis. A lot of my really self-sufficient people, my Virgos, I see them once a year on their birthday and they're good to go. And then other people I see every 3 years with like whatever the new, it reminds me of playing video games where you get bumped up to the next level, like you graduated and now we're doing this now. It's like when they graduate and have to develop new skills and function on the planet in new ways, that happens a lot. And then again, because I am a niche, people frequently call me when there's a legal problem that could go on for months or years, when there is an illness, a divorce. We've talked about this for years. I did 8 divorces and 1 or 2 wrongful terminations a year. And then COVID, like 20 years I did that. And then COVID hit and it was like there's no divorces. It's all real estate deals. And there's no wrongful terminations because there's staffing shortages now. And then it was all, how do we care for our elderly families? Like, how do we deal with the matriarch and the patriarch? Do we move them home? Do we put them in a home where there's so much danger? Do we, we need to update the wills and the trusts and do it in a whole new way. And so basically I am a very specific, I do a lot of things in a very specific way. And if you want to reach me, if you have questions, the best way is through my website, which is bethmcdonaldconsulting.com. And I also have on there a section for the Mystery School guidebooks, which are mainly for the retrogrades. Now, a word to the wise, the next retrograde prelude period starts on August 17th, which is a Wednesday. It's 23 days long. And then the Mercury retrograde starts on the 9th of September. And so those guidebooks, we have beginning, intermediate, and advanced, are designed to help you figure out how to best prepare, because forewarned is forearmed. And fewer surprises, less sudden expenses, that sort of thing. So that's me.
Wonderful, Beth. Honey, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
Blessing, and I learned so much. I love going back and watching these again and taking notes again, and it's wonderful. So for me, people can reach me at emotionalclearinghouse.com. And after 35 years of holistic family practice, I really am focusing on emotional clearing and finding ways to bring it from my practice out to the world That's why we're calling me Global Sobel these days, because I'm wanting my work to be available in a very affordable, accessible way. So on my website, emotionalclearinghouse.com, I have 4 programs that are available for you to do on your own. One is on healthy, happy relationships. One is on money and wealth. One is on body image and weight, and one is on fear and anxiety. And these are wonderful emotional clearing programs where I guide you, but you're in the privacy of your own home. And it's very affordable, and I'm offering you that. I am also available for private sessions. People can reach me through Emotional Clearinghouse, through an email, or my office number, which is 805-892-2400. So again, with much appreciation to Beth McDonald and to all of you
Thank
out
you.
there, thank you for being here for the Spirit of Leo. And we'll be posting very soon about Spirit of Virgo coming up.
Oh, we should give them that date because we have it.
I think it's after I come back from my trip, and it is, I'm pretty sure it's September 1st.
September 1st.
And we're going to do it at 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, because we wanted to honor the fact that a lot of you are out there working, and that maybe 6:30 at night would make it easier for you to come and be here in person and ask questions. So with no further ado, with much appreciation to all of you and to Beth, bye for now, and we will see you next time in September for the Spirit of Virgo. Take care, everyone.